Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, March 12th, 2024 City Commission work session. Thing we need to do is have the call to order, so if we could do a roll call.
Mayor Butler,
Here?
Commissioner McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt,
Here.
Commissioner Motta.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum, so we can conduct the meeting. Please. Pledge allegiance. Okay, next item is whether the commission would like to allow public comment. Do we want to vote to have public comment? We'll need a motion. Okay, seeing no motion, we will not have public comment. And wastewater. We're going to begin with wastewater because Riley County is delayed slightly and may be here later. So take it from there.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, sorry I couldn't be there in person today. I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank you for the opportunity to come and present this project to you. I know some of you have seen this project as Mayor Butler, you were on the selection committee for the CMAR. Probably you were also on the selection committee for the consultant. And so we are to the point where we are nearing 30% design, and we have nearly completed the basis of design report. And we are wrapping up the process of completing an agreement with our CMAR, Crossland Heavy Contractors. And so really tonight is just an opportunity to present this project to you in more detail. So tonight, Garrett Sheehan is here with Carollo. Garrett is probably more familiar with our plant than any other engineer. He has been a project manager for us on multiple projects at this facility, including the most recent major upgrades. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Garrett and let him present the project.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, Mayor, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back here to present the update on this project. We're going to roll through these fairly quickly. I know it's a nice day outside, but I want to answer whatever questions you have, spend as much time as you have to bring you updated on this project. We're going to talk about the goals, the facilities you have, if you're not familiar with them, on the improvements we're talking about for this project, the approach. Randy mentioned that we had selected, or you had selected, Crossland Heavy as the CMAR, costs and funding, which is always of great interest to commissions, status and schedule, and the next steps. The last major upgrade at your facility for the solids, there's solids and liquids at a treatment plant. The solids was 2004, liquid was 2014. So it's been a while since we've really upgraded what the focus of this project is, and that's the solids. Knowing in 2017, the city initiated the facility planning process to make sure we're keeping up with what was needed at the facility. We started those meetings in 2017. I was part of them. Evaluated not just the wastewater plant, but the water plant. We did small group sessions with staff, with commissioners. Final report was issued in October 2019, and I made that presentation. I think that presentation was also coupled with a pickleball presentation. So I got to learn a lot about pickleball on that night, and they came first. So in that facility plan, there were a number of short-term improvements that were recommended. Some have already been completed. That's somebody else. Number of short-term improvements were recommended. Some of them are completed. The city moved towards purchasing all the land where biosolids are applied versus leasing them. But a number of them identified here as this project were part of this project. So we're implementing some of those items that were in that facility plan. Our goals: improve the process performance, redundancy, resiliency, and reliability. We want a redundant process. We want a resilient process. We want you to be able to operate all the time. There was an interest coming from city staff of using the CMAR delivery method. It's the same method you used for your joint maintenance facility that was constructed. It worked out well. Randy was really a champion of moving this forward and trying this to get a real guarantee of the pricing and following a contractor early to make sure we can control the pricing of the structure rather than waiting for the bids to come in. We need to be able to adapt to regulatory changes because the regulations are always changing. We want to increase solids capacity. Manhattan is growing. We want to make sure all the facilities are in place to make that happen. And then autonomy. That was very important to everyone in the city commission, city managers and beyond. Be in control of your own destiny. So all those were project goals. Existing facilities, if you're not familiar with them, if you go east on Highway 24, near the confluence of the Kansas River and the Big Blue and Kansas River is a wastewater treatment plant. It's right along the levee trail. It's a well-run facility. If you're ever kind of in the middle of the screen there is the levee trail that runs along the Kansas River. In 1974 was the initial construction where 6.2 million gallons a day of capacity was added on the liquid side, and then also a biosolids farm on the south side of the Kansas River where solids from the process were land applied. In 1998, there was an expansion of the liquid side, so the liquid side grew in capacity. In 2004, there was an improvement on the solids capacity, so we're kind of mixing and matching, going back and forth, solids, liquid, solids, liquid. In 2013, the dates kind of vary between 2013 and 14 because of the timing of the improvements, but we increased the liquid, and that was a regulatory mandate to implement nutrient reduction mandates from the state. So when we're all done, these are the existing facilities that take all the wastewater from Manhattan, some from Blue Township, bring it in, treat it, settle it, degrade it, discharge a disinfected effluent to the Kansas River. The biosolids are still delivered over to the biosolids farm and applied to land management areas. At that biosolids farm, if you were to go over there, across from Dara's, kind of drive down the street and head up in the middle of some fields, you'll find 2 sludge lagoons. There the biosolids wait until the application period happens when it can be applied in the land between growing seasons. From there, it's pumped onto, as I alluded to before, a number of land management areas. Dr. Gerard does a great job of managing how those different land areas receive the treated biosolids. All of this is now city-owned land. A few years ago, some of it was leased, so the city wanted that autonomy to have that land owned and controlled completely by the city. Improvements. When the city issued the request for proposals on this, our team, and I should note my teaming partner, Mike Milius from Olson, is our local teaming partner. We helped come up with this roadmap, and we set that roadmap to help you navigate your project objectives. So you outlined a number of objectives kind of going around the outside of that picture. Because it's small, I put them in bigger writing to talk about these are the main aspects of the project. And again, we worked with the city, went off the recommendations of the facility plan to talk about what we needed to do in each of these 12 areas that the city identified as important objectives for improving the plant. So our improvements, and stop me anytime if you want explanations about what these mean, or maybe you're well versed in wastewater treatment, but a new digester, it's a big tank with the solids, they're sort of put together, blow some air into them, they decompose and they're pumped over to the biosolids farm. We're going to cover it and insulate it. In the past, the city's had problems maintaining the temperatures required to accomplish that degradation. We've already started making some revisions. We decided that, to start to trim costs a little, we're not going to do some modifications to Digester 3. We're going to continue with modifications to 1 and 2, and again, to maintain the heat so the city can have a reliable treatment process. Improve the instrumentation so plant staff have feedback on how this facility is running. That's a new message. Okay, hope it doesn't need a restart. Should I hit OK or not? Just click OK. Click OK? There we go. A new stabilized sludge pump station. Right now, there's 2 pumps who are doing a lot of different duties in the plant. To increase that resiliency and redundancy, we're separating some of these pumping operations. So some pumps are focused on one operation and some on another. Again, that was identified as a key improvement to eliminate a weakness in the distribution system within the plant. A new sludge thickening building. The technology that was put in 20 years ago. It's starting to see its age with the recirculation pumps, the pressurization systems, the skimmer mechanism. All those things are 20 years old. The technology has evolved greatly in 20 years. So we're looking at those new technologies to be implemented into the plant, including electrical and control. Electrical is also 20 years old. We know that electrical components have evolved a lot in 20 years. It's getting harder to find spare parts, so it's time to upgrade those facilities as well. A new scum pump station. Current layout does well, but I plan to identify some things I'd like to improve by centralizing the pumping station and taking advantage of some of that technology advances of having an easier to maintain and easier to clean system. A new septic holding tank. Right now, if you drive up to the facility outside the plant line is where septic haulers can dump. So can anybody else. So we're going to eliminate that application point, move that facility inside the plant line where it's secure. It can be monitored. Plant staff can sample it more easily before discharge to the plant. So again, a lot of improvements to improve the facility overall. The red boxes either show where the improvements are going to be located or describe them. So we have a digester. Again, boxes kind of on the left side of the screen because we've expanded to the right as far as we want right now. So a number of good improvements. On the south side of the plant, and Olson Associates is leading up the efforts on the south side of the river at the biosolids farm. New dredges for both of those lagoons. You saw those two lagoons. There's dredges that move back and forth and collect the biosolids and pump them out to the fields. So we're going to put new dredges. Those are 20 years old and seeing their age. We're going to do some mixing improvements in the tanks that hold the sludge, improve the pumping capacity, improve the lines. The drag hose line is small right now, and it really limits what the plant can apply. We'll be able to apply more biosolids faster, improve some of that access road at the facility, and provide some water storage that they don't have now. There's a pretty small service line to the plant, or to that area, which is 2 inches. So rather than build a bigger line at a lot of cost, let's store what we need. Any questions at this point? I know I'm moving through it quickly. All good? A lot of thumbs up. Okay. Project delivery methods. I'm not going to belabor this because I know we've gone through this in the February 6th meeting on selecting the CMAR for this. But we opted for this one to choose the construction manager at risk. So rather than the engineer developing 100% drawings, putting them out to bid, letting multiple contractors bid on it, we went out and said, let's find somebody who can collaborate with us at the 30% stage. So as I finish, or we finish the 30% drawings, bring that contractor in, let them comment on what we're doing, let them develop cost models. They're closer to how costs are developed. Let them look at it, give recommendations on how to optimize the cost and guarantee a cost. So when we get to 100%, it's not a surprise. It's something we can manage. And that's the benefit of this method. So they're going to be involved with this very soon in early April as we move from a 30% completion to 100% completion. And with their input, we know we can hit that cost target that we need. That's why it's called at risk, because they're going to take the risk of delivering what we come up with at 100% because they have been involved. So the roles are going to shift. Like I said, from 0 to 30, it's a lot about me, a little bit about the contractor.
Question.
Sure.
And you may be getting to this, but at what point do we get the okay, so after 100% design, we get the guaranteed max price?
Yeah, at each of those stages where you see cost, we're going to start getting input from their cost models about what it's going to be.
Okay.
And when we get to 100%, they're going to deliver a guaranteed maximum price to us. So as we proceed in construction, you'll know what that cost is.
Okay.
So anything past that, I mean, if something comes up an unforeseen condition, they're digging and they find, not sure what they'd find, but you know, there's things that could change that cost. But with that involvement, they guarantee a price because they've managed the risk to this point.
Right. So it's not, they're not saying, oh, we ended up needing 100 widgets instead of 50, so now you have to pay for those.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And given their involvement, and we're going to be looking at their cost models, each place that says cost, it's not a guarantee. It's their opinion of how they're going to deliver that. Now, there may be items along the way where we have separate GMPs. For example, if they identify an item that has a 2-year lead time, some electrical equipment used to have a 2-year lead time in COVID. We want to buy that early, so they're going to guarantee a price for that. If there's some civil activity that has a long lead time, like preloading the site for some settling, that may be an early out item, so there might be a second GMP, a GMP 1 and a GMP 2.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So till now, it's mostly been an engineer, us and Olson, developing 30% drawings. We're now at the point where as we go from 30 to 100, engineer and the CMAR have equal roles. They're giving us some guidance. We're developing things together. We're coming up with that collaborative approach rather than a confrontational approach, maybe at bid day about what we all thought it was going to be. And then we hand it off and say, build what you were involved with this whole time. We'll still support you from a construction services standpoint, from an administration standpoint, and making sure it meets the intent of what we did. But it's that nice handoff from engineer to contractor. So again, it worked well at the joint maintenance facility, and we're anticipating the same sort of successful result here. Cost. Everyone wants to know about the costs. When we first looked at all the roadmap items that were identified in the RFP, these are in 2023 dollars, with our best estimate of construction costs was $20.8 million. Randy's like, that's a little more than I planned for. So we went back and through meetings, we said, let's start cutting some items. Force main assessment, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of the lagoon. We think with some of the thickening improvements, we can better manage it without a need for a new lagoon. And we're looking at more items as we go along, and we know with the CMAR's input, we can validate this cost model. And if there's other cost savings, value engineering ideas, we can bring them to the table, discuss the pros and cons with staff, and then bring them to commission. Because ultimately, we're looking for you for guidance. Hey, this is an $18 million job. We like where it's going. Keep going. Or hey, time out. This is not working. I'm going to do this slide, and then Randy is going to talk about some of the project funding. It was initially programmed, it says $12 million. But those were developed in 2019 as a facility plan. A number of things have happened. First thing is COVID has put huge inflationary pressures on everything. Everything has gone up in price and time of acquisition. We've also added a few proposed improvements as we've been talking with staff. How can we build that redundancy and resiliency? We can do stuff at planning level, but when you get in a room in the bottom of the wastewater treatment plant, and if you've been there, it's this room downstairs, and we all talk about things, and we learn more about what staff wants to really run that facility, and it's important that they have the buy-in. So we're looking for operator buy-in, but we know their stakeholders. They know your stakeholders, their stakeholders. We're bringing all these things together so we can present them. And when identified, we are looking to pursue SRF funds through the Water Pollution Control Fund. And the CMAR is going to provide input on the use of those funds. Sometimes using SRF funds has a lot of administrative items associated with it. So if we're using them, they're going to give us some feedback. It's like, you could save 2% on the funding, but it's going to cost this much more to meet all the requirements that you have by using those funds. So they've been tasked in their pre-construction services to give us the balance of using those funds at a preferred rate versus the moving a project along faster without having some of those administrative requirements for SRF funds. And Randy, go ahead.
The SRF funds, is that the Kansas, that water pollution? Is that the same thing? Okay.
Yes, kind of the same. They want to use that low interest thing.
Yeah.
So I should have drawn a better job between connecting those two, but yes,
Thank you.
That's that fund and it's state revolving fund. So. And Randy, if you're still on, do you want to talk through these two slides?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Garrett. So as Garrett mentioned, so we ended up with a project budget that is more than what we had planned in the CIP. So we're pretty fortunate that the wastewater fund is in very good shape financially. It hasn't always been that way, not even in the recent past, going back to just 5 years ago. So when you look at a project that has a budget increase of 40% or more, we're going to take a close look at what that could do to our wastewater fund and just make sure we're not looking at some potential rate increases solely because of this project. So the fund balance chart that you're seeing, you're probably familiar with it either from past wastewater fund updates or even some of the commissioner orientations that we went through. But this is a little bit different than maybe what you've seen in the past, because when you're looking at a project that's going to get strung out over a 20-year period, we need to try to project out a little bit more because we have some CIP projects programmed for the next 5 years, but we don't know what's going to happen after that. So this fund balance chart shows some of the additions to what I would call the current forecast, or what we saw at the very end of the 23 budget year. And so what we've done is try to add some additional costs for being conservative. And what you're seeing here for assumptions includes up to $500,000 in annual to be determined personnel or outsourcing costs after 2025. That could also be O&M costs over the entire wastewater fund, not necessarily the wastewater plant, but anywhere within that fund. And then also because, smaller projects that may be added to the CIP project to the next 5 years aren't really accounted for in the forecast right now, especially some that may be either cash projects or projects that we would fund with temp notes. So we've assumed that there is an additional $1.5 million annually of to be determined capital projects or debt after 2030 in this estimate. The last thing that I've assumed here is that, it's not really an assumption, but what the forecast has programmed for rate increases is a 3% annual rate increase through the year 2030, which is pretty average for what we look at on a year-to-year basis. We always try to have some small rate increase every year to avoid that big rate increase. And then also what this fund balance projection shows is actually flat rates after the year 2030, which we don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but it's a pretty conservative estimate. And as you can see, this fund balance includes the project as it is budgeted in the CIP at about $12 million. If you advance forward one slide, Garrett, it'll show, and I apologize, I'm not actually seeing the video here, but I've got this pulled up on my computer, and you can see, while it does have an impact on the fund balance, when you add about 40% to this project, you can particularly see it around the year 2030, where it looks like the projected fund balance will dip below the recommended fund balance. That's the red. But the fund balance overall appears to still be very healthy. And based on that simple analysis of what we know and maybe some assumptions of what could happen after 25 and 2030, I would say I'm pretty confident that we can perform this project as is with the current budget without having to go back and look at additional rate increases when we come to you in July or the following years to look at the fund and have an update and look at what the potential rate increases are going to be for the next years. So I'm pretty confident in the project moving forward with the current estimates. Of course, we've got a lot of work to do in the next 9 to 12 months to really work with the contractor to narrow down what that price is going to be, as Commissioner Appelt referred to, as we work towards that GMP. That's all I got for now. So Garrett, you can take it back over.
Hey, I got a quick question.
Sure.
I'm curious why, or like, how is that recommended fund balance calculated? It's just kind of, because we see that spike, like that kind of corresponds with where we would be in below the recommended fund balance, but then the recommended fund balance goes down. What's like the reason for that?
So in general, a recommended fund balance is established by general industry practices that is, for us, 3 to 4 months of operating expenses and a year of debt service. The drop that you see after 2031 is actually about $2 million in debt service that is coming off the books for the upgrade and expansion of the wastewater plant that Garrett referred to, the last major upgrade we had for the liquid side. So the 20-year loan will be up for that project. So we'll drop quite a bit of debt off the books. I think it comes off at 2031.
Okay. Thanks, Randy. I'm going to advance the slide unless there's more questions on cost. Nope. Okay. Project status and schedule. When we started this, we talked about doing preliminary design starting in late 2022, proceeding into early 2024. We're right about at that point. I'd say the red arrow's a little bit to the right. We've advanced maybe the design past 30 in some places and less than 30 in others, but CMAR participation begins, and I'll go through their timing in April in a minute. But they're going to begin design review. They're going to look at what we did, give honest opinions for value engineering ideas, the risks they're going to take, things to maybe change some of that gap that Randy showed on that previous graph. And again, we'll be working towards in that time doing that final design through the next 9 months to get to that final design, to get to that GMP, assuming there's one, And so we can begin construction in 2025. We're estimating 18 months. Obviously, we'd love it if the contractor says, hey, I can turn this into 14 months, because time is money to contractors. So hopefully they can find a way with their estimating and their approach to change that. So in early 2026, we're working into the commissioning phase of this, so we can get all those improvements, those redundant, resilient improvements into the facility that the plant can use and plant staff can use to have some confidence for the next 20 years. So the next steps is we're going to engage the CMAR in the design development process. That's early April. Optimize that schedule, see if it's really what we estimated. Engineers and contractors don't always match exactly. Identify early out equipment and construction packages, electrical gear, pumps, other civil improvements that may take time. Confirm those cost estimates. Hopefully they come in and say, hey, it's not 18, it's 16. That's my hope, so I can keep standing up here and talking about this. Submit that pre-application for the SRF loan. You know, we need to have some certainty of that as we apply to the state, so we're getting on the priority point list and the intended use plan, so we can reserve that money for the city of Manhattan and this project. And we'll be continuing the design document development. That ends the solids part of this. Any questions? Ms. McCullough?
Sure, I always have questions.
Sure.
What are the outliers? What do we have to worry about that might impact us? I saw the state of Michigan has really come down on the farm fields that because of PFAS. Am I right there?
You're correct.
And really putting the agricultural people in a world of hurt, because I don't think there's any way to treat PFAS, if I'm right.
Correct.
So what kinds of things like that might come up?
We
I mean,
talked
if we own our own fields, then we can pretty much poison them if we want to. No.
I'm not. We did have extended discussions on this about what do we do about an uncertain regulatory environment. How are things that are happening in Michigan and Maine and California going to come to the center of the country? How are they going to be applied here? You know, we do have Michigan, we do have Wisconsin, we do have Minnesota, all promulgating regulations. We're seeing more of that focused on water. We're seeing more of that focused on source control. We're seeing more of that focused on the effluent of wastewater. There hasn't been as strong a biosolids component to that. So the timing's uncertain. So how long do we wait to do some much needed improvements to the plant versus integrating these? We've tried to set up the plant so as technology changes and regulations change, we can insert them in the process where we need to deal with them. We're learning more every day. I mean, 5 years ago, we didn't know about some of these contaminants. We're learning more. And so there's plenty of research, and I'm going to go into that in a little addendum section on this about what we're doing to deal with some of those and how research can help us identify some changes. So are there risks? We have to wait for the regulators to speak, EPA Region 7, KDHE, and let technology follow it. Technology is going to follow these treatment trends. I mean, that's what happens. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I just think that we need to be mindful that sometimes we predict things clear out to 2030, and there's a lot of changes that may take place. I do feel, I don't mean we should poison anything. I know he does. But I do feel more comfortable that we own the land, that we're not putting some dairy farmer in, bankruptcy. What's the SRF loan rate? Is that a interest rate?
It's a subsidy to, usually it's and Randy, if you know what it is right now, usually it's a 2% subsidy on top of whatever you get for your best loan to the city. So it's basically you take the loan and they subsidize a percentage of that and give it back to you, so to speak.
I don't know exactly what the rate is. They used to post it on their website and update it about every 6 months. Generally, it is prime -1 or so, give or take. Mike Milius is there in the room. I know he does a lot more SRF funding projects with Olson. He may have a better idea what it is currently.
Do you want to speak in part?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, currently, I think the SRF, the interest rate's around 5%, which is, right now is a pretty good interest rate. The kicker is, like Garrett said earlier, there are some strings attached to it that do drive up the construction costs, so that's why we're going to look to the CMAR, get the current interest rate, look to the CMAR, and see if it's the most advantageous for the city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I would
This
just,
is one of the reasons we actually selected Crossland. They had a large focus on their knowledge with analyzing project funding and looking at utility bonds, general bonds, and KDHE funding, and help us come with the best project.
Commissioner, I would just add to the comments that have been made. It's one of the reasons we need to have a reserve, because you just never know what the feds are gonna throw at you. You know, one of the unique situations about our wastewater treatment issues is that we have a national permit that's issued and reissued periodically, and they control what we do. There is no such permit for everything else that flows into the rivers, except unless they're industrial permits, but farming practices, all of that sort of thing. So they regulate us because they can, and they do, even though we're a minor contributor. But I would say it's been my experience that it's kind of whatever's going into the Gulf at the Mississippi that we feed into that comes back to us to correct and take care of this chemical or take care of that nutrient and get it down to this level. And that's where these guys have to figure out how we're going to do that. You know, we do have an aerobic system, but I know we're looking at some other options for some anaerobic, and maybe you're going to get
That's our
into some of that with a partnership that
Yeah, I have
we're
a few
working with
slides
K-State
after
on. Cool. So that's just the unknown that happens.
And we are following 5-year permit cycles usually, so if we're looking at, you know, if there's some sort of mandate to change what we do, that happens in 5-year cycles. So we could wait 5 years, to wait 5 more years, to wait 5 more years. Do we let the infrastructure at that plant, I wouldn't say suffer, but continue to be harder to maintain during that time? So I think
And
we
our
did
permit
keep
is
everything
up
in
for-
mind. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Ernie, what's
well, I
that?
know it's very hard to identify what's happening with non-point pollution, and we are point pollution, so it's easier to judge and test us. But I do think we really have to be very careful in what we're putting out into the world and make sure that it's as good as we can
Yeah.
make it.
And I know Dr. Gerard is spending a lot of time making sure that, you know, everything about this facility that has been run so well for so many years, I mean, trust me, he's paying attention to that, and he's always pushing us on it too. So it's being looked at.
We did get burned a couple decades
A
ago.
long time ago, and since then, we've been a leader in our biosolids production, and we want that agricultural land to be a top producer, so it pulls out the nutrients, and Abdu and his crew have done a great job in managing that.
Yeah, Karen, that was a good question, because we discussed that at great length when we were picking contractors, because he brought that up about the fact that maybe this biosolids thing will change, but the problem is, there isn't any real way to be proactive at this point, because we don't know what the government will do. I think the commission was proactive in buying the additional farmland a couple of years ago, which made this a little bit easier to function. And what people may not know is, I think we made a $230,000 profit, if I'm right, next year on the farmland, last year on the farmland, because the crops are grown and we get some of that money back. So it's not like, we bought the farmland and it's just sitting there not doing anything constructive. It is actually a revenue source.
Remaining questions in the biosolids portion? Okay. Staff has asked me to give you a quick synopsis, and we've talked about this with
Garrett,
city
can
manager.
you hold on a second?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I was going to make a comment, since we were talking about the NPDS permit. It does actually renew this fall. And so we just actually completed our application process. So Garrett mentioned the 5-year cycles. We will be starting a new cycle, a new 5-year permit cycle, I believe in October. So also, Mayor Butler brought up a good point with the biosolids land. We actually had it in the CIP to try to purchase quite a bit more land. And that's one of the things we have put off until we know more about PFAS in the future of the biosolids program. We won't be buying any land until we know more about this. And I think I want to just go back and make a comment about a lot of the things that you see in the project roadmap, improvements that we're making, are improvements that we would need to make regardless of what the EPA says about PFAS. There's a lot of money that's tied to improvements at the lagoon, and I think those are necessary. But there's a lot more that we could be doing, expanding and improving our biosolids farm, that we've opted not to do because we know there's some uncertainty.
Technology is always changing, and we are working with K-State University right now on a Department of Energy project funding opportunity to get grant money from the federal government to explore further improvements, being on the cutting edge of treatment technologies. This is only going to take a few minutes. I was asked to keep it very brief, and I know our sheriff is waiting behind us to give an update. So there's different sections of the federal government. This particular one, the Industrial Efficiency and Decarbonization Office, has a fairly substantial budget for different endeavors with energy emissions, different technologies, and technical assistance. And so we're looking to tap into some of that money, and they did put out a funding opportunity that was applicable and very applicable to the wastewater treatment plant at Manhattan. It's called the Decarbonizing Organic Wastewater and Wet Waste Treatment. There's an opportunity for a $2.5 million federal share of money to start researching how to make improvements in the treatment process in a very exciting area called anaerobic treatment. And without going into much detail, I think Mr. Fair pointed to that about changes to how we do it. There is a small cost share from all the participants, and I'll kind of hit that in a minute. But in general, all the participants, if they contribute $600,000, they can take advantage of a $2.5 million budget. So we can implement this project. It would be performed between April 2025 and March 2028. We've submitted a concept paper. My team and K-State team is working on that full proposal right now. That effort's being led by, I'll just call him Dr. P. Everyone calls him Dr. P. And he's associate professor at K-State. He leads a number of wastewater initiatives at the university. He's a lead principal investigator for a number of projects, including one similar to this that's already occurring on the campus with a similar type of treatment program. So we're confident that the pictures in the top, which is what we're basically proposing to move over to the wastewater plant when we're done, that same sort of pilot facility to research what this grant proposal is looking for us to research. He's not here today. I think he's overseas for spring break. K-State's on spring break, as you know. So he's over there and decided to take that time. So he wanted to be here, but he was happy to provide a picture. The title is Mainstream Anaerobic Treatment with Energy and Nutrient Recovery for Domestic Wastewater Treatment Plants, and with a goal to minimize greenhouse gas emissions. I know that's a very hot topic for a lot of people. How do we cut down with those and look at the economic footprint of those improvements? K-State is leading the charge, but they need a partner, and that utility partner is City of Manhattan. And so it's great to already have that relationship. The students already got to the plant. We've already worked back and forth. Corolla will be helping, and a number of other entities, both private and public, who have an interest in this. So there's a lot of interested parties, and I'm finding out from the team helping with this proposal, there's a lot of competition for this proposal. So you don't get competition about something people don't believe in and they think it's going to advance somewhere. So we're excited to go after this. We also believe that the wastewater treatment plant, without going into details of all these lines, this facility is set up very well for this project. We strongly believe that with how it's set up. Went through it with staff. They were excited about it. We did a proposal last year, didn't go through. This one we're renewing, and it's more focused, and we're more optimistic about being able to make improvements at the plant. And everyone wants to know the benefits. I mean, if there's no benefit to the city, why would you want to be a partner? It has technical relevance to what you need. You have grease that comes into the system. We know about the grease removal efforts of the city. Greenhouse gas emissions. We're right next to the levee trail. We'd like to reduce all that, but it also gives us additional feedback on treatment plant operation that can be useful for optimizing treatment plant operation, which is good. High-strength organic pretreatment. We know that VetMed, BRI, NBAF all have high-strength wastes. You have significant industrial users that discharge. So if we can use that to optimize that treatment, it gives us a test bed for future process modifications. Creates a regional hub for innovation and excellence. So many things happen from the coasts and come to the center. We think it's the other way around. Manhattan's a great place for people to come, put you on a national roadmap of how this can be done. You're a medium-sized facility. There's a lot of large facilities with huge budgets. Most of the country has a lot of medium-sized plants, and that's where the federal government is saying, let's focus on them, because that's the next piece of so many plants that could benefit from this. And so having that project here, it's not only put you on the roadmap, but people are coming here to see your plant. They have to stay in town, they have to check out, restaurants on Points Ave or whatever else in the hotels. So, again, there's a lot of benefits just by having the project here, even if we don't get past the research phase. And we'd like to get past the research phase because we have to prove this is going to work. And then we foster that community between the university, the city, the treatment plant, everyone around. They can understand all the things that are happening we're trying to do, and they can say, hey, Manhattan's doing everything they can to make for a better environment. So a lot of benefits to the city. On the timeline, we're working hard on this. When I get back, I think I have some things I need to mark up and write, but on March 26th, that's due. We'll get notifications, hopefully, of thumbs up in October 2024. There is a cost share. We've already talked with staff, with city manager's office about that cost share, and we think we've come up with a number along with the rest of those partners. Everyone's putting in money to get a piece of this, so we're all contributing to that. And if selected, and we're hopeful that we will be, January 2025 is where we'd start setting things up and putting out a pilot facility. You saw in those pictures, putting a pilot facility at the treatment plant to research the feasibility of this, and hopefully proving to the federal government this is a great facility for you to go to the next phase of actually putting in real life, full-scale improvements at the facility, which could benefit you from a treatment aspect, but also other improvements at the plant. So another way to fund some of those capital improvements that Randy had mentioned. And that's what I have on that project. Any questions about this project or the previous one?
Is there anybody, I know you mentioned, aside from treating the waste from NBAF, is there any research value to NBAF as well with that?
NBAF they've implemented their own high-strength treatment system themselves, so we don't, last I knew, and maybe Abdu can prime me on this, they were producing a dryer cake that got landfilled. So is there an opportunity for them to bring back some of their waste to help this facility? I mean, we'd love to be able to be a partner in that. So helping NBAF, I think it helps more with BRI and Vet Med because they currently still discharge some of their higher strength organic wastewaters into the system. So we'd more target them, I think, than NBAF. NBAF kind of drew an envelope around themselves and said, we're going to minimize our impact. So yes, but those other facilities.
Well, I think it's fantastic. Go for it.
Okay.
I'm not sure the chamber's going to be thrilled if we're the solid waste capital.
No, it's center of technology hub, so I wouldn't call it a wastewater capital. I'd say, here's what we're doing to make wastewater treatment more efficient, make what we put on the lands more efficient, handle it, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, because that's the goal of that ARPA's office is decarbonization and greenhouse gas reduction. So I'd present it that way.
Yes,
as
very positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does kind of go along with a lot of the mission that we've talked about, making this region kind of a technological hub. So it does make sense, and it seems like we get a pretty good return on investment from that.
Yeah. And K-State and KU being linked, for a project that shows there's a strong interest in. I know Randy's on the line, but when all of us can team together on that sort of thing and look past whatever sports differences we may have, it shows it's a positive thing. So, are there other questions on either project?
No, I think excellent briefing, and I think this is pretty proactive to try to go after this grant because it'll put us ahead of the game if we get surprises from the federal government on changes. So excellent briefing, appreciate
Okay.
it.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, and then we'll move on to not the sheriff, but the director of RCPD.
It's fine. I've been called everything but a child of God. We're good. Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, City Manager. Brian Pete with the Riley County Police Department. I'm going to just briefly go over some monthly statistics for February, and then I could dive into statistics as they relate to Fake Patty's Day, if you will, and then talk about just a few other items, such as the crime reduction plan that the department has just put out, where we currently sit at with staffing, and then as the budget is, we're hitting budget season in the stride. So for the month of February, Part one crimes, and part one crimes are traditionally the scarier crimes that folks think of when they think about law enforcement, the more violent crimes. So for part one crimes in February, we were almost 11% below the 5-year average compared to February last year, which there was about an 18% decrease. Year to date, we're down 21.7% from the 5-year average, which is again, it's a very good thing because we already have a community that we're doing well in fighting crime, and the officers, the corrections officers, and especially the investigators are doing a lot of work to keep that, to always keeping that bar going higher. So from with robberies, there were 2 robberies reported in the month of February, which is about 150% above the average. Again, keeping in mind, we're to the point that 1 robbery, 2 robberies skew it at a higher percentage rate, but crime is a very personal thing, but I think we're very fortunate that we live in a community that pays attention to this. And I also want to say that law enforcement's one thing, in keeping crime down, but it's also the tenor of the community itself. So I think that we're, again, very, very blessed to be here. There was one arrest in one of these incidences as of March 11th. There were 4 aggravated batteries and 4 aggravated assaults reported during the month of February. This was 16.7% below the 5-year average. 2 of the incidents in February were domestic related, and as of the 11th of March, there were 3 arrests related to those aggravated assaults and batteries. For part one crimes, we were down almost 11% from the 5-year average. Property crime to date is 21.6 below the 5-year average. And the property crime for last month included 8 structural burglaries, 11 larcenies from a motor vehicle, 3 auto thefts, 0 arson incidences, and the rest of the incidents were larcenies. There were 55 of them. Again, just the minor thefts, if you will. For structural burglaries, we were 46% below the 5-year average for February. 6 of the burglaries were non-residential and 2 were residential. All of them occurred, unfortunately, in the city of Manhattan. For vehicle burglaries, we were 41.5% below the 5-year average. There were no signs of forced entries noted in 10 of the reports. So again, to the folks who are out there listening, lock your doors, because sometimes, or a majority of these times, these are crimes of opportunity. So let's just keeping people as honest as we possibly can. For motor vehicle thefts, we were down about 35% from the 5-year average in February. 1 of the vehicles was taken from a known suspect. 2 of the vehicles have been recovered as of the 11th of March. DUIs, unfortunately, we were 41% above the 5-year average. That's a good and bad thing, that officers are out there enforcing it, but that we're seeing it. Traffic accidents, the number of accidents was 17.5% above the 5-year average. And for preventable traffic accidents, we were 23% above the 5-year average as well. And again, these are numbers that could change depending, as we continue to conduct investigations, or more numbers to begin trickling in from the reports that are out there. Before I move on, are there any questions from the commission regarding monthly statistics for February? Okay, seeing none then, I will move forward to Fake Patty's Day analysis. Now, I've got several, I called into K-Man a day and a half ago, or yesterday, I apologize, and talked again about Fake Patty's Day. And so to anyone who may disagree with me on Fake Patty's Day, there's always room for very, very passionate discussions, and we can figure out what we can do for this particular event. So I want to make sure that I'm serving the community that I've been charged to do. So those are, again, I want to preference that, but I'd be willing to have those conversations with anyone. But for the most part, I've gotten some feedback, and the majority of folks who have contacted me were also expressed a significant amount of dismay or aggravation with the Fake Patty's Day event at all, or as a whole. So of cost, I was hoping that we would stay below $50,000 for OT costs. Thank goodness we did. So as a total, we spent roughly about $37,000 of overtime costs as we've done that. And I think that's a testament, again, to the line level supervisors who were keeping an eye on turning people, letting people go, and other officers, coming in and leaving at certain times. But I do want to say that I think several of the officers have stayed later than they, but also just kept it, very discretionary at the time that they spent. So I'm very confident and very thankful for the officers who've done that. So 2024, we were above the 5-year average, up 23% compared to 2024 of last year, or 2023 of last year. There was about a 70% increase regarding all calls for service during Fake Patty's Day. Historically, traffic stops were the top call in nature during this event, followed by minors and possessions and open container. This year, open container was the top call in nature, 111 calls, followed by public contact calls, 63. And that was kind of also by design. So KHP was here. They were helping us doing enforcement. But emphasis were on looking at how do we be proactive. If we're stopping folks out there on the street, that hopefully curtails people getting into vehicles and moving forward. But again, it's a double-edged sword, because if we have a majority of our officers on the ground, then we're not out there able to enforce traffic violations. 2024, we were below the 5-year average for citizen-initiated law calls for service. That's down about 10% compared to last year. There was a 23% increase. This did break the downward trend that has occurred from citizen-initiated law calls, and obviously it was a COVID incident, and so now we're starting to see that pendulum swinging back up as more individuals come out. Parking problems, unwanted subjects, noise complaints were the top citizen-initiated calls natures for this year. Of course, the majority of incidences occurred around that area with Raton and everything else of that effect out there behind the Blue Mine area. That's where we focused the majority of our officers at. The top 5 offenses were batteries, simple batteries, disorderly conducts, drug possessions, interference and obstruction with found, and then of course found property. For the most part, I think during the day, and I say these words very loosely, is I think we had a lot. One of the fortunate things was we had cooperation from folks who were out there. The majority of people, I say in my experiences there, with an unofficial poll, I think that we cited were not from the Manhattan area. And that's a common theme that everyone hears. You got somebody coming in from outside the community who are, this is kind of a license, I guess, to act like an idiot, if you will. And I'm sorry, I just won't kind of hold back on what I think and the behaviors that I saw out there. It's just one of those things that we just have to, in my opinion, work to snuff out. There was a professional football player out there from Dallas. There were several teams who are out from other community universities or colleges within the area or just outside of the state. And again, this is something that I want to try to be proactive with, and I want to try to extend professional courtesy. So I'm in the process of putting out a very carefully worded email to those specific organizations, just kind of saying, hey, you have a reputation, you have people that you want to keep on that straight and narrow. So let's try to focus on responsibility and accountability here. So I'll be sending out information to all of those respective agencies here by the end of the week. For citations, looking at those numbers that were issued during Fake Patty's Day this year, we were about 12% below the 5-year average compared to 290, or the average is about 295 compared to 2023. We had an increase of 83%. Again, that is by design because we're trying to be more proactive because once we, if you will, we never really have control of that area. But once you really lose control, then it's all bets are off. So we want to let folks know that we're serious about accountability, that we've heard our neighbors, we've heard my constituency as well as yours, and from your input and your priorities for me for last year, that we want to be assertive in how we're enforcing it. Just giving one example, there was going to one house and asking folks, who lives here? Are you invited to be here? No one, of course, knew anything. And then several people coming out of the house. I'm like, hey, do you live here? Nope, I'm just here to use the bathroom. And go in the house and come to find out the homeowners aren't there. And people just came into the house and they're just sitting in there drinking or just going to their bathroom left and right. So I just had to go in there and lock the door, and hopefully nobody went back in there when we were trying to move people in different directions. So that's the kind of things that, again, that we're dealing with. And if I try to imagine that, everything, again, like I had mentioned, crime, no matter how large or small, is a personal thing. And I try to imagine, how would I feel like if that was my house, right? So, and that's how all the officers view this. It's a personal thing for all of us. So for citations, offensive historically open container was the most cited. This is consistent with the past years that we've done for this year. 107 open container offenses. This is followed by stop, stand, prohibited in certain places, possession and or consumption of alcohol by a minor. And our arrest summaries. We've had the most arrests this time around, and a 50% increase compared to an average of 37.8. DUIs, which is historically a top arresting offense, was the third highest offense. Interference and obstruction was the top offense arrested in 2024, followed by disorderly conduct. And again, that's by design. We were out there on the ground trying to deal with folks. And the majority of those arrests happened towards the tail end, if you will. And again, it was it's just something to be, for me personally, it's just to be fed up with. Individuals who are just walking down the street and they just, for no reason of their own, but besides being drunk, they're just going to punch right through a glass, a display glass out there in Aggieville. So it's just, how do we keep it from going? The business owners were extraordinarily helpful for us. We had a very cooperative relationship there. Again, a big thanks to the city because they were huge in the involvement of our planning for this year, the fire department, all the way up. Just the opportunities and exposure to being able to talk to folks was just invaluable for our planning. So with that being said, are there any questions that I may answer for the commission regarding Fake Patty's Day?
Commissioner, I wanted you to be aware that one of the things Brian hasn't touched on is one of the things that there was considerable amount of neighborhood pre-work, visiting not just the folks that were problem areas and putting them on notice that they're going to have some things to contend with if they try to repeat what they did last year. But a year ago, after the event, the commissioners that were here will recognize that there were numerous owners or renters that were in that complaining about all of the damage they had to their property and disruptions they had to their property, people just walking into their homes, and just really a bad scene. We didn't have anybody at our first meeting for public comments. I have not had one call concerned about the issues. I had numerous calls last time. So I really appreciate the preliminary work that you did in going door to door in that neighborhood. I think that really reassured a lot of those folks that they could rely on you to be there when the call came. And I think it put some other folks on notice that maybe some of those things didn't quite get as out of hand as they were last year. And thanks for that work.
No, and thank you, and seriously, thanks for the city, because again, a great partner, after and before. What can we do for you? What can we do for you that helps? And it was a blessing. We are responsible to the city. If you will, putting it in business terms, you are my client, and I have to be responsive to your priorities, and I want to make sure that we are. So thank you for that. There were a lot of officers that were being very proactive in me and talking with members of the community. Several times I went through certain houses that we knew that we were getting multiple calls, and I got You know, you're either going to yell at me today or you're going to yell at me next week at the city commission or the law board commission. So I'd rather take my butt chewing right now. So we went to some of those houses to figure out what we were doing right, what we were doing wrong. One of the most confident things that I got was several people that I have talked to and asked folks, hey, just move along. This sucks. This is worse than last year. I don't even know if I want to come here next year. Yes, don't do that. Don't do that. So, yes, ma'am.
Do you have count for ER visits?
No, not at this particular point in time. I do not have those statistics. We're also, and unfortunately, trying to put some feelers out to the crisis center to see if, because historically we may have one or two in the beginning, but then we may see a fallout several months after the events have happened. But I do, it was pretty good, because even amongst the crowd, last year I saw several incidences of young ladies, even gentlemen who were left on their own, passed out. Now that was this year as well, but I didn't see it as much as I saw it last year. And I think there was a huge concerted effort, because I know the department reached out to the organizations on school and on campus, and I think there was a huge concerted effort that no friend left behind. So a lot of folks were traveling with each other this year as opposed to last year when everybody was like, you're on your own, I'm out there to do my own buffoonery.
So was the majority then east of campus again?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
The majority of the big parties were in the Raton, Thurston, that area? Because, you know, I live south of campus, and it was pretty quiet. There were a lot of people walking back and forth, which is fine, you know, in various sort of amounts of drunkenness, but they were on the sidewalk and fine. So,
Yeah,
you know.
yes, ma'am. It was,
Yeah.
most of it was consolidated to that area. And
Yeah.
then it's one of those finite things that as folks are going online and they're using social media to say, hey, where we're at. 1 minute we had everything under control, if you will. The next, within 5 minutes, just boom, people just showed up on Raton. And it was all because a group of people who were redheaded said, hey, we're going to do a ginger race. I don't mean to offend anybody, but that's what they put online. And a lot of folks who were redheaded came out to that area and just ran down the street, and everybody else lemmings, just follow what was going on. So we had to, again, work in pushing folks back out into other different parts. And again, for the most part, a lot of the folks who were renters, the younger kids, were just asking for our help. Hey, these people aren't here. They're not listening to us. Can you help us push people off of our property and move them forward? And that's what the big concentration was.
I wanted to ask a couple questions. I know you spent probably 12 hours down there. Appreciate that. You were there the whole time, so you got a firsthand view. And that's important because a lot of people, you know, send us notes and they don't get a firsthand view. So they don't really know what's going on. They're just hearing stuff. And I spent a little bit of time down there, and the Raton area was out of control, I thought. And, you know, it looked like somebody took a garbage truck and emptied it all along the street. You know, and you think the students all into this green movement would know better than doing an environmental disaster as part of this too, besides the damage. But you know, some people have said, oh, this is no worse than a football game weekend. And what would be interesting would be, you know, I don't know how to answer that, but what are the statistics? I don't know if you've got the time, and I know you wouldn't know that off the top of your head, but it would be interesting to say, okay, here's the fake Patty's Day statistics. Here's, you know, KU football game weekend statistics. Here's Patrick's Day coming up, you know, a normal, and then look at that and say, is there a huge disparity? And in my mind, by just observing it again, personal view, there is. And I know you've gotten some feedback for saying we should kill this thing off, but, you know, my opinion on this is that, yeah, people can party if it's like a normal football game or St. Patrick's Day coming up. But we've got to send the message, and I support what you've done, is that, you know, we are not going to tolerate this mayhem and nonsense in our city. Other cities might, we're not going to. And I think that's the message that's got to be sent. And I don't think we're heavy-handed. You know, it's not like the police are going out there arresting everybody. I mean, you really got to go out of your way. That's been my experience watching the policemen. You got to just really push your luck to get arrested. And you could have tripled, quadrupled, you know, the amount of people that were arrested or cited. And so I think it was done about as well as it can. And then my other point I want to emphasize is if you try to pin the rose on somebody in town, who owns fake Patty's Day? It's almost like, unfortunately, RCPD does at this point. Because, Aggieville won't take responsibility for it. No one else will. It doesn't have an official sponsor. And so it just seems to me like the weight of this sort of fell on the police department, and I think you stepped up. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for that, sir, and I really sincerely appreciate that. And yes, people had to pretty much talk themselves into a ticket or an arrest that particular day, and that was some of the marching orders that came out from the sergeants and the lieutenants, just get people to move along. And so thank you very much for that. And I would venture to say, without looking at the statistics, very, very similar. I mean, I've been out there when we've had rivalry games here, and I just did not see the level of recklessness and disregard that I've seen. And again, I think it's folks who are coming into our home and eating and just leaving a big mess for us to clean up. But again, a lot of pride and a lot of thanks for the community members, for the young people who were hosting those parties. They seemed very committed to say, hey, guys, kind of go someplace else. I don't want to deal with the cops right now. So yeah, we will continue doing what we're doing. I want people to come in to Manhattan. I want people to see how great a community this is. I want people to go to Aggieville and see how fun it is, because it really is. But I just wish that people would be more responsible in how they do it, but that's preaching to the choir, I think, to our community.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of reiterate what Ron said. I think the reaction this time, I mean, no one at our meeting, I didn't get an email, I didn't get a call. I mean, that's never happened before, and through a number of these. So I think you guys did a good job. I think it's toned down, even though it's still not totally toned down. So glad to see it.
Thank you, sir. And then the final three items, just to briefly discuss with the City Commission, is the crime reduction plan. Last year, we finished that. March 8th, we got the results of the survey back from K-State. Not as much as I'd hoped for. I think there were only 19, but still, from what we got from that, we were kind of on the right track. So we put that, the crime reduction plan, out to the public. I did send it out to the city, to the county, to all of the municipalities within the county as well. And then our staffing levels. One of the other good things, again, that we were very hopeful for with funding for Fake Patty's Day was because we've anticipated towards the end of last year, with where we saw our recruiting efforts going forward, that we would be very close, if not fully staffed, for a very good part of this year. And if we're fully staffed, that means everything that we've got has to be watched, every penny has to be watched very closely. I make it no secret that I do believe that this is an ingenious way of consolidation, but I'm astutely aware of how the city is the last to eat. And it is our responsibility to be very good stewards of the money that we're beholden. So we're looking for ways that we can add to our budget to decrease that burden that's on the city as well. But we want to make sure that we're very astute in how we're moving forward, which leads me to the budget as well. So we've looked internally, we've pulled out the old white belt and the yellow belt for Lean Six Sigma, and we're going to be meeting with our law board members to talk about the efforts that we've made in cost savings internally with contracting, everything else to that effect, and how we can reduce that to the ask of what we're going to be looking for next year's budget. So we've heard the law board loud and clear. We've heard the city and the county loud and clear. And again, as I've been punching on the podium, increasing salary and benefits for law enforcement officers, there may have been a time that was something to do. It is unsustainable. And I'll tell that to any chief or any sheriff within this country. You can't do that. And for us to be complaining about the cost of gas has gone up, the cost of vehicles have gone up. Well, no joke, because we're always asking for more to compete with whatever's going on. The biggest thing that any department has control over is the morale and the culture of their organization. So we're doing everything we can to ensure that culture is one that attracts other people from places that may be higher paying than we are. But the older you get, I think all of us in this room knows, hey, I'd rather make a couple $1,000s less a year than have to deal with that headache or that heart attack, that potential heart attack at that location. So that's been the recipe of the secret sauce for the Riley County Police Department, because we are looking at being fully staffed. Here, we're fully staffed in corrections on paper. We had 54 people apply for a few open positions within the sworn side of the house. We are moving forward, and I think that we're in a very good place. So with that, are there any other general questions I can answer for the commission?
Yeah, I think I wanted to ask one question, because I think I saw a note on adding a position to go along with the co-responders.
There was I'm not sure if we're looking to add another position for the co-response. I think we're in conversations with the county to see if we could bring in someone under contract through ACH to help us with the mental health in the jails facilities itself. We're just gonna keep, and plus it's hard to, and thank goodness that Pawnee got a big boost, but realistically, I think what we're doing right now has been effective. And if we can handle it with a two-pronged approach, one on the street and one in the corrections facility, I think we'll have a good benefit from it. So we're not looking to add another.
No, I knew it wasn't another co-responder, but just clarify, so that's to help the jail with the mental health
Yes.
issues there.
100%.
Yeah, and I think that was, I think the cost there was somewhere around $80,000.
Yes.
Something like that, and that's just gonna be important as part of the budget discussion, but I think that, that's one of those things, when I read about it, I think it's a great idea, because we had all that problems in corrections, and part of it can be tied to the mental health thing, and they didn't have any professionals to help them. And so, when we had a personnel issue down there, I think it's a good initiative, and of course, it would be contract, sort of like the co-responders. But I think that's worthwhile, and I've got some ideas on how to help funding that. But
Yep. Yes, sir, that we will take everything we can. What we're finding is mental health, especially with substance abuse, because there's a lot of comorbidity there. And if we can get folks, when we're in controlled environment, in corrections, you can get them off whatever they're on, and then actually start a focused concentration on that. I think the percentages statistically are higher to get people help when they come back out into the community. So it's a recidivism, it's a way to cut recidivism.
And I think, you try it, and if it produces results like the co-responder program did, I think that's been successful over the years. It's a good initiative.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to say, great job keeping staffing full. I know it does make things a little bit tighter for the budget, but I know you and I talked earlier. It is cheaper to maintain staff than to have turnover. So appreciate that. I think it obviously reflects well on you as a director, that folks are wanting to come and work for you. So, we appreciate it. We obviously, everybody, we need your services. So, yeah, appreciate that. And you're right, that salary only goes so far. Having not great leadership definitely does a lot on morale. So hope to keep that up.
Thank you, sir. And again, big shout out to the community. There's a huge difference in coming from other places and then coming here to Manhattan and dealing with folks. It's a different type of mentality, and that's what makes going out in the street a lot more sane, if you will.
Okay, I don't see any other further questions. Excellent briefing, and just, a great shout out, thanks to all of RCPD for the work done on Fake Patty's Day, because it's definitely an improvement.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the City Commission.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda would be the city manager's briefing.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. A few things. No, I will at the end. Ciao. So a couple things to talk about. First off, we're members of the Association of the United States Army. We typically make a trip back to the annual conference in the fall, usually in October. There are individual membership levels that go along with that, and those members receive the Army Times and other information about what the Army is doing. Obviously, there's also a local AUSA chapter that we belong to as a result of working to keep Fort Riley and the Central Kansas chapter strong. So renewal time's coming up here at the end of April. And so right now, the levels are 2 members for $175 total, 5 members for $370 total, or 10 members for $685 for that one-year partnership. Currently, we're on the 2 members for $175. That one's myself and I think John. I think Commissioner Morris was on, but she's no longer a commissioner. So, I just looking for, you don't have to be a member to go to the conference. And so that's not necessary, but if there are others that are interested, you might let us know. I don't need to know tonight, but however you want to do that, that would be good to know in the future. Again, we got till the end of April to decide.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. I've always been pushing lean management. I give Ron a hard time about all the, memberships and stuff that we join. And when you start adding all these up, if you had like all 5 commissioners on there instead of $175, you got 600. And that's how we can get extra money to fill potholes. We got to cut something. And when we talk about cutting, in my mind, this was always a start. And of course, being a member is not that expensive, but going to their conferences, because that's about $2,000, everybody that goes there. And so I'm just big on, trying to limit that. And I've done that myself for the 10 years I've been on the commissioner. So I don't participate in a lot of those expensive trips for that particular reason, because when people out there are yelling at us about, please manage the budget, this is one of the easy ones. This is low-hanging fruit to get rid of, excess there. And so I think, on this one, we cut it down to 2, which is the minimum that is needed there. And I think that makes sense to me.
All right, well, think about it and give us some feedback. We can talk about it again if there's interest, and if you want to, we've never taken that formal action. We've usually come to an understanding, so we can keep working on that. Also, in your packet tonight, in your mail folder, there was a letter from the Konza Prairie Community Health Center, and they're requesting some time to be on our agenda to give an overall update and talk about some of their legislative issues. I guess they do this to the Riley County Commission twice a year in the spring and the fall. I think we've done this at a joint city-county meeting before also to kind of make it more efficient for them, although they've requested to do it separately. Anyway, I didn't know if that was something that you all would be interested in. If so, we can certainly put them on a work session or a discussion session item at a legislative meeting or a potential city-county meeting.
Yeah, see, I'd prefer a city-county meeting. I don't know why the county probably wouldn't object. I mean, because a lot of times we don't have items for the city-county meeting. And this would be a good one to put in there, save time for both organizations. And actually, those giving the briefing, I don't know why they'd want to do it individually when they can get us all in one place at one time and go to it. So that's my recommendation.
Okay?
Yeah, city kind of makes sense with
All
this.
right, thank you for that. Also, Commissioner Adamczyk, again, is at NLC in DC and is extending some personal time there this week and won't be able to attend the regional council meeting this Friday. And so their bylaws allow for any commissioner to attend and vote. And I didn't know if there was, we talked previously about whether we wanted to appoint an alternate. We talked about Commissioner McCullough has been on that group before. I think we did kind of suggest you would be the alternate.
And I'm on the executive board there now, so.
On the regional council?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Why did I think Susan was there?
I think she was to be there if I couldn't.
Oh, okay, never mind. So, congratulations and thank you. We don't need a substitute. Thank you for setting me straight there. Also, we submitted a letter to the legislature today, House committee meeting tomorrow on completely eliminating the local ad valorem reduction statutes, which obviously that's no surprise with that. And I think it's not going to get a hearing in the Senate, but it's going to go directly to the Senate floor is what we're hearing on the legislative alert. So that's in the packet tonight on what we submitted. And then I also included, we made up some federal legislative items for Commissioner Adamczyk to visit with congressional reps. I know she had meetings scheduled today with Representative Mann, Senator Marshall, and Senator Moran. So I think she was on the Hill late this evening, so wasn't able to tune in with us. So got a Good Morning Good Morning Manhattan show on the 21st, and also joint city county meeting on the 21st, Thursday, and that's here. The Food and Farm Council is on the agenda for discussion there. An update from them. Intergovernmental meeting on the 25th. And then the City Leaders Academy, which is the old governing body institute, the league's in town hosting lots of other elected officials from around the state, as well as some of the staff on Friday, April 12th. And so far, we've got Susan and Peter attending that. So thank you for that. Let me jump to the planning chart. Got some fairly full agendas coming up. On next week, on the 19th, we have President Linton is scheduled to be here and give us an update on everything K-State and some of the initiatives that they're working on, including the campus master plan. So it'll be great to hear from him. We've had past presidents show up periodically and talk about some of our joint projects. North Campus Corridor was a big component of that over the years, and some of the economic development efforts that we've tackled jointly. We'll have a presentation and discussion on some of the Aggieville infrastructure, specifically looking for feedback on some of the proposed designs for 12th Street, as well as Laramie and the alleys and some of the other components of that. Again, not any action, but looking for some feedback to help guide some of that design as we work for some solutions, primarily of those public spaces within Aggieville. And then the American Rescue Plan Act project, we had the first $10 million we allocated because we had general use of that to help with us to plug some of our needs over the past 3 years, essentially, and we had an additional $2.7 million that are significantly impacted by the rules. You might recall we had originally set that aside to help build a fire station out east. We found out that wasn't going to be an eligible project based on the most current rules, and so we engaged with Baker Tilly, our consultants, to look at a number of projects that we might be able to use that for, and we have a couple that we would like to recommend to you for consideration, and would like some feedback on that. Again, we have to have the funds obligated by the end of this year, and then spent by the end of '26. So we've got some very worthwhile infrastructure projects that we think will be a big contribution. It's about $2.7 million of that funding. We have a public hearing to vacate a easement on Irene Circle, and then they're going to dedicate a new drainage easement as part of that. On the consent agenda, we've got some really good bids on the hangar projects. You might recall we had a grant from the feds for 90-10, 90% federal grant, 10% local. We had 5 bidders for the project, with iConstruction submitting the low bid of $2.259 million. So our car share on that's going to be $282,000, which we'll be able to recover. We'll bond our portion and recover that from rent off those new hangars. So really, really good deal. It was great to have that much interest in the program. We'll also have a grant offer for you that night, as well as construction administration services by the consultant for about $358,900. We have a change order number 1 on our Tuttle Creek Boulevard North Channel improvements. This is the utility relocates that was needed to be done as part of the levee project and then going into the plant. And that's about a $24,000 change order that's we're asking you to approve. We also have another change order. This one's on the US 24 and Levee Drive intersection. Recall we got an $800,000 grant from KDOT to do that intersection. This is where you go into the joint maintenance facility. The rest of that dollar amount will be bonded as part of the joint maintenance facility cost. It's about $54,000 in additional improvements that were needed there. And then several final plats there on the Willis edition. We also have, want you to accept a grant from the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Pathways program. This is a grant for what's called the Valley Drive Sidewalk, which is the missing sidewalk on Fort Riley Boulevard, where the cow path is from Martin Luther King Boulevard to Westwood. So that project's well under design, and it should be out to bid later this year. Again, that's a KDOT, we have some KDOT cost share on that project as well, I believe. Is that right? I think so. Maybe some safe routes to school money or something like that, helping fill some of that gap. We also have a contract amendment for, I think it's Schwab and Eaton, on the Lagora Lane. It was started out as a water project. If you don't, Lagora Lane is east of campus. It's, as a former city forester, I know it well because it's a massive grove of sycamore trees, which typically get quite a bit of storm damage when there's a storm. So anyway, while they were doing recon there for the water line, they found out the stormwater system there is in really bad shape. So we're amending the contract to do the stormwater work while we're doing the water work there and create some efficiencies. We do have an executive session identified. I'm not sure we're going to need it. Tammy tells me that Lynn Marbosa will be here with SGR. They will be here Monday through Wednesday. They have 22 scheduled meetings with stakeholders during that time. So if we're needing an executive session, we'll be able to have one with you all for that city manager recruitment update. So I think that's all on the 19th. On the 2nd of April, we've got several general agenda items. 4 of those, 3 through 6 there, are requests for resolutions to support the low-income housing tax credits for these 4 different development projects, as long as the IRBs for the sales tax waivers on construction materials, as well as some fee waivers. I don't know that we'll end up with all 4. I know we have 3 very interested. There's one that hasn't contacted us, that they want our assistance. We've told them we're willing to, and this would be the good meeting to go to if they want it. So those are all kind of nestled together there. We've got 2 rezonings. One is the newly proposed EMS building there by the health department. And one is for our Tecumseh Road. We have a pump station that's just below the health department that pumps water up to the western part of the community. We're rezoning those. We created a new zoning district instead of some of you might recall the municipal facilities zoning process that creates a standard zoning district as opposed to going through the municipal facilities project where you're asked to balance the needs of the public versus everybody else. So we actually created a zoning district that fits better, I think, than the balancing act. And that's what the county's going through that process as well. We intend to look at doing that to a lot of the school properties as well. And then some discussion on Lee Mill Village development, the developer we are working with there to try to move some of those vacant lots that haven't been developed forward. We have on consent some first readings. This may be a general agenda, I don't know. We're not quite sure yet, looking at our ordinance with parking garage fees as well as some of the license plate recognition. So anything to add there, Jared? That one might adjust a little bit. That might be something that we'll need to have a broader discussion on versus being just consent. And then we've got some replats, some easements, another final plat, and that's pretty much it for the second. On the back, again, some upcoming work sessions. On the 26th, have the traffic master plan coming forward. That's really looking at our whole network of traffic signals in the community, as well as all of our arterials and aspects of that. It's really looking, though, more at that network of signalized intersections, as well as our other types of pedestrian controls and different control devices. And then also an update on the Seco Park improvements that the design team is working on. And then on the 9th of April, we'll have the street update for the community as to where things are headed from some of our planned work, as well as some of our emphasis over the next couple of years, and then also a stormwater and floodplain management update. And then our Visit Manhattan from the Convention and Visitors Bureau will be here with their first quarter update. And then the second work session in April will be an update on Move MHK, on the Comprehensive Parks Master Plan, and obviously that's getting a lot of play. And I think that's it, Mayor.
Okay, I've got just a couple of items I wanted to mention. One, they got the parade for St. Patrick's Day coming up. I think John and I are gonna ride in it. I don't know if any of you are interested. Briggs has given us a convertible, and Dennis asked us to participate, so I told him fine, and he needs your help, Johnny. He wants us to pick up 2 convertibles from Briggs Saturday and drive them down there, one for the Grand Marshal. So if you're game for that, the 2 of us can. Yeah, he's gonna give me the time, and then we just drive over there and pick them up and then deliver them back. And so I thought, well, we'll show support for his event and do that. The other thing I wanted to mention was that I asked the RCPD director about that additional person there. And just for you to consider, when we get around to our budget, I mentioned this last year, we have that special alcohol fund, which can be used for things like mental health. And I've asked finance to give me an estimate of, exactly how much will be in that fund, because I don't want to take money away from what we gave them last year, which was about $500,000. But if we end up with projections over that, I'd like to take the excess and actually use it for part of RCPD's contract for those, mental health people or co-responders, because what that will do is it will help everybody on the mill levy, because it will reduce the, amount that RCP has to ask for. And in my mind, when I look at where the committee passes out that money, I've always been big on priorities, like this is number 1 for me, and if you're not number 1, then, people farther down won't get as much money. And what we had done in the past couple of years is we're not telling the committee who to give the money to. We're saying, committee, here's your money. So what I'm saying is take it off the top, because that would be our priority, to say we want to give a portion of this to RCPD because it's number 1. It takes care of some of the issues on mental health. And then number 2, it helps with the budget, for the city. So that's just for your consideration. When we get to budget discussions, I'll go into greater details on that. And I sent the city staff a note. I got an email from the Flint Hills Council, and they want us to do a letter of community support because they're trying to get some tax credits from the state to do some upgrades on the Discovery Center. So I didn't see a problem with it, but just, why not? It's not gonna cost us any money. And if that helps out the Discovery Center, I see, absolutely no problem with that. So if we could,
Yeah. Actually, it's supposed to be in your signature file.
yeah, I probably haven't looked at it yet, that's why, but, okay, I didn't know if the rest of the commission was aware of that, but just wanted to keep you informed. And then lastly, the stakeholders meetings are coming up. Are we gonna consider putting out a press release on that? Just because a lot of people send us emails about, how is this process working? It would be interesting to say, okay, here's where we're at, where we're gathering input, and there's, 18 or 22, whatever it was, stakeholder meetings, and they're gonna take place during this time. Is that worth doing, or?
Yeah, I think it would be good to do. I just don't want to give the impression they're open to anybody. So, I mean, they're scheduled meetings with these
And
stakeholder
that's why
groups.
we'd have to make
Right.
clear that, this is the process, and
Yeah,
if you were on the stakeholder list, because we added a few, people contacted me on that. We added a couple of organizations, just to let people know this is where it's at.
Yeah. No,
And if it's, yeah, but you're right, definitely word it so that these are not open, but this is what's happening, and we're moving along, because that's on everybody's radar, I think.
Sure.
During every insider newsletter, we're trying to, if there's an update on the city manager recruitment, we put out a little blurb and a notice about that. So what we could do is add that as an update after the fact, so that we don't confuse people. Because if we put out a news release that says there's public stakeholder opportunities, it's gonna seem like it's open to the
That's a
public.
good suggestion, do it after the fact then, but at least
Yeah.
keep folks informed so that,
Yeah, certainly trying to continue to do that.
Yeah, very good. I can go with that. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, those were the only four things I had, so anybody else?
Hey, Ron, would you like an update on the Raleigh County Animal Control?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Wyatt.
So Chief Scott French, Fire Chief French and I met with the Raleigh County Commissioners on February 29th at their request to discuss animal control services, and it was an educational opportunity for everyone, for us to kind of describe what those services entail within the city limits and what their needs might be in the county. And so they've asked us to put together a scope of service for animal control in the county to include response to dispatch, calls for dispatch, which might involve a phone call, or it might involve actually sending an officer out to somewhere in the county, investigation of a violation of their resolution, and then transport of animals from the county to the animal shelter, which I understand they're working on an agreement with Prairie Paws to handle that sheltering aspect. So staff will be working on kind of the details of what that service could look like, proposed fee model. We'd bring that back to you all for some discussion. Perhaps that's another city-county item, but just wanted to give you a heads up that conversation was occurring. They've requested that service, so we're working on those details.
And that's excellent, because we're moving forward on that, because I know the rest of you may not have gotten this, but I think it was like probably 8 or 9 days ago, I got a number of phone calls about somebody dropped off 2 dogs and 7 puppies out at Hunter Island. And I think our guys went out there and fed them, but they weren't allowed to move them or do anything. And the guy on the property, wanted to have some help, and I said, sorry, outside the city limits, and the county has no system. They ended up calling a shelter in Kansas City, and a lady came all the way from Kansas City and picked up the animals. And, the guy that owns the property took care of that on his own, but, so I'm glad to see that's moving forward. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, if we don't have any other updates or anything, then we can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we have a movement to adjourn the meeting. I'll second. Roll.
Commissioner McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Butler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the meeting is therefore adjourned. Thank you.